Hello everyone, what's going on? My name is Mr. Pazak and it's time to tell you my story. Why do you want to know my story? Well, because who wouldn't want to know the story of the greatest Pazak player who ever lived? It's a simple question, really. I mean, I did some other stuff along the way, but really, I'm sure what you're here for is to hear about Mr. Pazak and my story of, I guess you could call it greatness. I don't mean to brag, but you know, I'm pretty good at Pazak. Now, I'm pretty sure, if I remember, I was good at quite a lot of things. Now, I was also pretty tough. You know, when you're fighting a lot, when you're listen, when you're fighting a lot. And when I say fighting, I mean teaching a guy not to cheat you at Pazak. You gotta be ready. Mr. Pazak, that's my name. Never, ever forget it. Let's start the story, you know. I woke up on the Endar Spire. At least I think it was the Endar Spire. And so, whoa! Lots of explosions. That's the first thing I remember. And I was like, what's going on? Who's trying to blow me up? And then this guy came in and he was like, oh, hey, I'm Traskolgo.
We've been ambushed by a Sith battle fleet.
I was like, who the fuck are you? And then that's when he actually told me it was Traskolgo. Now, we were on different shifts, so, you know, we didn't really see each other much, but he's lucky for him, because I would have taken quite a bit of his money. And you know, I was just lying there and I was like, oh, I should probably get a sword and some clothes.
Okay.
And Trask was like, oh, you know, we locked down the door, so why don't you have me open the door? And I thought that was a pretty good idea. So, but first, I rewarded his good idea with a new blaster, because I just had a spare in my bunk. But, you know, with the Sith attacking, I figured I can afford to give Trask a blaster.
Now that
But then I took control again, and I was like, let's go. I gotta slice our way out of here.
That was Carth.
But then Carth gave us a call and was like, yo, things are bad. Let's get to the escape pods. And I was like, yes. Let's do that.
No problem. Got it.
And we found this Republic soldier, and he was fighting these two Sith, and he was doing okay, but then, bam, one shot. One shot was all it took. And we were like, we will avenge you, our friend. Trask got one. And then he stole my kill. I was gonna kill the guy, and then Trask was like, nah, it's my kill. But before we could even mourn our fallen comrades, we had to keep moving. The Republic ambassador needed us. And more importantly, I needed to get off this ship so I could keep getting Pazak money. Fighting our way through the ship, killing Sith as we went. It was fun. You know, it feels kind of bad taking stuff from the Republic. But on the other hand, you know, we're trying to get off this ship alive, and I don't think the Sith need all this cool stuff we're leaving. Then we came across this huge firefight between, like, 4 dudes and some Sith. But man, the Republic dudes were getting slaughtered. And then one Sith had the brilliant idea to throw a grenade at him when their guy was fighting him with a sword. So, you know, team killing, but whatever. Unfortunately, he also killed 2 Republic soldiers. But then we were like, hey, and by we, I mean, you know, me. Trask doesn't really do a lot of the thinking for the little bit he's in this story. I was like, hey, why don't I use a grenade? And I killed 3 dudes with it. And I saved the galaxy. No, that's getting ahead of ourselves. Sadly, a little droid friend got blown right the fuck up in front of us. Started finding some weird stuff, like some fancy crystals that I don't know if they were there before. You know, it's not honorable to loot the dead, but they don't need the stuff anymore, and we kind of need to survive against the Sith, so... Feels kind of bad, but, you know, you just gotta push through that feeling.
It's a dark Jedi. This fight is too
Came
much
across a Jedi fighting a Sith.
All we do is get in the way.
We better hope the Jedi wins, 'cause we're probably gonna die to that Sith. And then with one quick flourish, the Jedi killed him, but then she died to the stupid Sith
That was one of
explosion.
the Jedi accompanying Bastila.
Explosion the ship, yeah, I said it. But then some other soldiers that were just watching from the Sith were like, hey, we should kill those Republic dudes. And we were like, nah, we're gonna fight back. Me and Trask will take out this whole Sith boarding party by ourselves. Oh snap! Then we were at the bridge. There was a massive battle going on. Lots of Sith and Republic troopers were coming at us from every which way. But then the front of the ship exploded and killed a bunch of everybody that was fighting.
Bastila's not hit.
Trask reminded me, hey, Bastila's not on the bridge. That means she probably got to the escape pods, and if she's not on board, well, you can probably guess what the Sith thought of the rest of us. We weren't really important to them, so the ship probably didn't have very long. Trask, if you could get out of my way, that would have been fantastic.
What?
Now, what skills? Well, we're good at those. It's almost like my skill progression is different from normal. Now the real question is, what do I go with in terms of combat skills? I think Mr. Pazak knows exactly when to attack, but amazingly, Critical Strike is not in here thanks to one of the changes I made to this game. So it's Power of Flurry, and you know me, I'm always gonna go fast. Whoop.
What?
Don't worry, Trask, didn't mean to put you in charge. I know that's exactly what you fear the most. Trask, just for safekeeping, I think I'm gonna take those two blasters away from you. I don't really know why, but let's just do that.
There's something behind here.
And then Trask was like, oh shit, I found a Dark Jedi.
You get to the escape pods.
And he sacrificed himself, knowing he couldn't defeat that Sith, to let me get away, and I will forever remember that Trask was there for 5 seconds. You know, I owe a lot to Trask.
This is Carth on your personal communication.
And then as soon as Trask left, Carth called me and was like, hey, you're the only one left, buddy. I was like, oh man, that's bad. The Sith want to blow up this ship real bad, don't they? And Carth was like, yep, probably gonna happen. But then it was just me coming across a few Sith, but I knew I was close to the escape pods. I had to be close. I wasn't gonna die on this ship. I was gonna get off. I was gonna live a life filled with Pazak. I just had to get through a few Sith. And then, after a short time, there was just one room between me and Carth and the escape pods. And I knew, but there was Carth gave me a call and was like, hey, there's a whole lot of Sith on the other side of that door. And I was like, oh shit, what can I do? But then I had the idea, just blow up the power conduit. And then, with a couple of cries, I knew they were all dead. Open the door and bam! Bodies. And one very blown up power conduit. For some reason, the Sith body, the guy in charge of the squad had a nice prototype vibroblade that I took.
You've made it just in time.
Alright, Carth.
I'm Bastila.
Time to head down to the planet. Let's get the hell off this ship before it explodes. Ugh. I don't remember much about crashing down on Taris. I think I blacked out in the pod. Kept seeing visions of this woman. No idea who she was, though. At the time, at least. But thankfully, Carth seemed to drag us into an abandoned apartment. And Carth was like, hey man, We gotta find Bastila. She's gotta be on this planet somewhere. And I was like, yep. Sounds like a good idea. And Carth was like, yep, we're buddies. We're gonna work together till the end. And I was like, maybe. Threw a nice upgrade in that fancy new vibroblade that one of those Sith had been carrying. Since, you know, I was gonna be the sword guy. Carth with his fancy blaster pistol. Still don't know where he got it.
Right, you alien scum. Everybody.
It's as if we weren't dealing with enough trouble already. The second we left our apartment that Carth dragged me into, we found some Sith just terrorizing some helpless aliens. Unfortunately, the Sith commander noticed who we were immediately, but one grenade solved that problem lickety-quick. Thankfully, one of the Duros who was being harassed by the Sith thanked us for our help. And then, you know, we needed the help, so we started breaking into some apartments. These people don't have much, but we're gonna see if we can do any good.
Who are you?
Came across a woman named Dia who'd been harassed by this guy Holden. Apparently, she was just defending herself against him. And he came at her with some, let's call them unwanted advances. And this guy Laram, who was running a store, was like, hey, I got something to sell you. And I was like, oh, do you have any nice Pazak cards? Carth seems to have forgotten my deck in the escape pod. And he was like, well, I also got energy shields. And I was like, that sounds good, but I also want Pazak cards. Sadly, he didn't have any Pazak cards on him. He did have some cool stuff. He got lots of pretty decent armor and things like that, but, you know, we only had a few credits on us since Carth had left all that crap behind on the ship. You know, it's Carth's fault, not mine. Don't worry about it, though. But we were just bipping around the apartments, you know.
No problem.
I feel bad for these people, but some of them, you know, we really need the resources. We're Republic soldiers, and we really needed some help. Saw a lot of races that we weren't going to see in many other places. We saw Quarren. Don't really see them anywhere else.
Got it.
It's kind of weird. It's like they just were, a few of them were hanging out in this shitty apartment on Taris, and apparently no more exist in the whole galaxy. There's also this janitor guy who kept giving me a look like he wanted to talk to me, but I ain't got time to talk to a janitor. What I do have time for is leveling up my skills. Making sure I'm always ready. But yeah, that apartment complex we found ourselves in wasn't so big. We also didn't want to piss the janitor off because, you know, he had to clean up all those Sith bodies and that big explosion from my grenade. I felt bad, but, you know, not much I could do. The Sith were coming in and they were going to find out about me and Carth. They can't do that until we find Bastila. We got to get her out of here. But once we were outside, I was like, hey, Carth, why don't we talk? But Carth was talking about his family, you know. They died on Telos.
It shouldn't be. Yeah.
Carth was like, I don't want to talk about it right now. But I knew he'd talk later. Maybe after we'd traveled together a little more, Carth would tell me about his family on Telos and how he, you know, it wasn't his fault, but he blames himself. But that's a story for when Carth is willing to tell it.
The Sith.
Came across this other woman selling some pretty sweet gear, including a permacrete detonator I felt like could come in handy later. She had some really sweet swords going on, but sadly we were still really light on credits. I hadn't had a chance to get to the Pazak tables yet. But once I did, we'd be floating. And that's when we found ourselves at the canteen. And I knew if I was going to find a game of Pazaak anytime soon, it was going to be here.
Hello there, young. Just 50 credits.
This man named Garuk, the only man I found willing to sell some cards. I knew there were other players.
Hi there.
Came across a woman named Sarna.
I'm back.
She was pretty impressed that my name was Mr. Pazaak. She was actually a Sith.
Don't.
But thankfully, she invited me to a party, and I figure where there's a party, there's drinking, and where there's drinking, there's cards. Came across a man named Jurgen,
No hard feelings, my
who
good
really didn't want to talk to me, because, you know, apparently I wasn't good enough for him. Well, if he was still around, he would have had a different tone.
Wed.
Came across a really snooty woman who was this really spoiled brat named Ganna Lavin. But who really cares about her? She's just a snotty kid. She can't do nothing. But then when he came to the dueling arena, and it's no Pazak, but it's worth talking about because, you know, it was a good time. Me and Carth showed up just in time for a match between Gurlon and Duncan. Deadeye Duncan, even.
In this corner, I give you Gurlon Two Fingers. And over here, looking to climb the ranks yet again, is the ever-persistent Deadeye Duncan.
Now, the funny thing about this match between Gurlon and Duncan, you know, the last match the two of them would ever have, as soon as the match started, Duncan dropped his pistol, and one shot right to the chest just dropped him immediately. And Two Fingers had won again. But when I saw how easy Deadeye went down, I was like, there might be some money in this. And I talked to a Jor. The hut running the whole game. And I tried to get more money. But he was like, nah, I don't care, Mr. Pazak, how good you are at everything. But then we were already in the ring for our very first match. We had Deadeye Duncan as our very first match. And with one swing of my sword, I dropped him to the ground. And with that, we had our Pazak deck money. Could probably take on Two Fingers. Let's see.
Lady in this corner,
Took a
one of the greats, a man so tough, even a disfiguring injury couldn't end his career. And in the other corner, a relative newcomer to the...
The announcer kept talking about how we were the mysterious stranger, but I really knew we were just a guy. But all I wanted was that money. Gurlon put up a shocking fight. He blocked a lot of my swings. It was actually kind of unexpected. You'd think a guy with 2 fingers couldn't handle a sword that well, but he was pretty okay. But at the same time, he was not doing a lot of hitting of me, so it was really just a matter of time before I beat him. I started to get real fancy near the end there, just throwing flurries of blows at him, throwing faster and faster, wearing his fingers out. And eventually, he just dropped his guard. And boom, like that, we were already down 2 contestants. Now we had more than enough money. But something told me that I wouldn't be able to take on Ice or Marl for a long time. But at that point, I had what I needed. I had my Pazak money, and I ran back the wrong way around the bar, back over to Old Man Garuk.
Hello there, just 50 credits. Glad to see you. Good luck.
And like that, I don't need any lessons. I am a Pazak master. And Niklos, the only man.
What do you want?
He was the only man willing to play Pazak. And I said, absolutely, let's play. I didn't have much of a sideboard, but we were ready to play the game of Pazak. First hand went pretty slow. He stood at 18. I was wondering whether I should... And I decided to drop. I took a gutsy move. I dropped a +4 and beat him. But we were both down a card and I was up 1 round. And that's when I knew I might have had him. 10 on the top. I was real excited for maybe the easy 20. But then I came up with an 18 after 2 more cards, and I was like, bam, +2, we're good. But then out of nowhere, he drops the -4. I was like, oh no. Up to 14 is no good, especially when we're not sitting on any minus cards. And I was at 18, and I was trying to think, should I sit with the +1? Nah, we're going to stand. We're going to try to stay up card advantage. We're up around. We can afford a loss to stay up on cards, and he did blow a card to get to exactly 20. Second, the later round, after we were tied 1-1, he started coming off. He drew the high cards, and I was drawing real low. He went up to all the way up to 25, but damn him, he had that exact -5 he needed. He was going to stay at 20, and I knew I had to just go for it. And it ended at 21, and he was winning 2-1. But I had 2 cards left, and he had nothing. He was coming straight off the top of the deck. It was all luck. I stood at 18, and I waited as he flipped his cards, and he hit 22, and he was out. So now it was tied, 2-2. Next round was the win. We were all starting off at 9, but we had 2 cards, and +4 on a 16. We were at straight 20, and he was just top decking, seeing what he would get. He had to hit a 20 to keep the game alive, and bam, 24. We won.
You were lucky to win the last match, but luck is not...
You think that was luck? I
going to
challenged him
enjoy-
again, because he insisted that I was full of luck, but I knew that I was a real Master Pazak. I am, after all, Mr. Pazak. Boom, straight up to 18 after 3 cards on the first round. A +2, bam, right up to 20, but he matched it with a +3, hitting 20 as well. Both down to 3 cards. But I drew Snake Eyes off the first 2 cards, and I knew he was... Oh, triple ones, that's what it was. And he stopped. He got it. That damn son of a bitch got a straight 20 for nothing. But so did I. 6 cards later, we were still tied 0-0 down 1 card. I flew all the way up to 15 and decided to take the gutsy move of dropping my +5. But so did he. He hit 15 as well. That sneaky devil, matching me blow for blow. All the way up to 15, and I knew I had to take a chance. He was at 17. I was at 17 as well. I was hoping he would bust immediately, but he got a -5. Oh, but I drew straight 20 off the top. Still 0-0. He had only 1 card. I had 2. He was drawing real low numbers, but I got that 16 +4 straight to 20. Down to 1 card each, but he's not done with his round. 24, boom. I got a set. I'm up 1 set to 0. Draw a 10 off the top. 17, I'll stand there. It's a pretty lame move, considering he drew a straight 18, but I had no way of knowing. I only had a +1 card. I had no minuses even in my sideboard at the time. He was drawing real low, and I had to hope. I got a straight 20. Perfect. He was drawing real slow, but he ended up going from 11 to 21. Would feel more bad for him if it wasn't the golden game of Pazaak, where I am the master. He was at 16 after 3 cards. I had just drawn my 3rd, and I was at 15. I only had a +1. I had to go for it and hope that he busted. And he did with a 24, and I was victorious.
You were lucky.
I knew at that point, though,
If you ever wish to test your...
I knew that he was nothing. Oh, that was just the rules of Pazaak.
I saw your match against Niklos. He doesn't, you know, you're my kind of guy, rich and handsome. The bartender can mix us up something special for only 20 credits.
Then a woman who was...
I love a man who's not afraid to spend his credits.
Ooh, Christia. You know, she saw me beat Niklos, and she was like, hey, come to the tap room for a 20 credit drink. And I was like, sure thing.
Wow, are you really a noble?
I can trace my lineage back 5 generations to one of the founding houses of Taris. In fact, we seem to have some unexpected company, my darling.
Oh, don't pay attention to him. He's just some Pazaak player I met. He's not an actual noble like you. Come on, sweetie. Let's go back to your mansion.
And then I learned, never trust a woman who's talking about cards. Sounds harsh, but it's true. That damn bitch swindled me out of 20 credits. I wasn't ready to deal with Bendak Starkiller. He's a little too high grade. I knew I had just started dueling and I had no chance against him. But when I left the bar, I was surprised. I found Gan11, that little punk brat, with 2 Rhodians with swords pointed right at me.
How'd you like that?
Luckily, we dealt with that problem pretty quick, Carth and I. We kind of chased her off. Stupid kid. She didn't know what she was getting herself into, trying to send 2 hired goons after 2 Republic soldiers. But it gave us a good chance to pop into the nearby store and sell some of our excess gear. I definitely don't need that. I sold her some stuff and we were up to 500 credits. Considering we had only landed on the planet with about 30 credits in my pocket, and Carth had nothing on him, the idiot. We were doing pretty good for ourselves. I'd made 60 credits for Pazak, not counting the 20 lost to that bitch Christia. But I knew the game would be waiting for us, but I needed to find more opponents than Niklos, so we continued our journey. And after a short walk down the street, we found an odd medical facility where this nice man, Zelka Forn, was there.
I see from your appearance that you require heal.
And he told us about the rat ghoul disease.
I am.
And he was like, there's a cure, but only the Sith. The Republic is working on a cure, but then the Sith overran their base and they stole it. But maybe in the Undercity. And I was like, yes, I'll find some from them and I'll bring it to you, Zelka. But he seemed like a nice guy, so I wanted to spend some credits there. But sadly, he wasn't really selling anything that I was too interested in. My brain was not ready for some of those high-level implants he had, but I saw something strange. He had a security room. 2 Republic soldiers.
What are you doing?
But I recognized them in Zelka. I convinced him that we were friends of the Republic.
I hate to imagine what the.
But Zelka was like, hey, man, don't tell anybody about these Republic soldiers. I'm taking care of them. And I was like, I won't, Zelka. You're doing a good thing for these nice men. I don't know them, but they survived, and that's what's important. But then his buddy Gurney, or Zelka's worker Gurney, was like, hey, you could take that serum to Zax, the hut down in the lower city, and he'll sell it. He'll give you money for the serum, and then Davik can sell it for money. And I was like, no way. Zelka's going to help people with that rat ghoul serum.
Davik says...
We ran across this random old man in the street, being harassed by bounty hunters working for Davik, and I don't take kindly to bounty hunters. Dropped them in half a second. But then I handed the man 100 credits. And like that, he was gone, but I knew I'd done a good deed. It's easy to win money. It's not about the money with Pazak. That's what you gotta learn. It's about beating your opponent. But just like that, we were ready to. Me and Carth were on our way into the other half of the other Taris streets. Pop back to the apartment for half a second, just so that we could rest. I've been beat up a little bit at some point. Didn't even know when. But one quick trip back to the apartment, we were fully healed up, and we just came back to Taris to keep exploring. A lot of apartments on Taris, so we went to another apartment complex. I also knew that this was where we had to meet the woman Sarna, who had invited us to that Sith party. Now, I'm not a fan of the Sith for obvious reasons, but I'm ready to party and make some money playing cards.
Got it.
Came across a man named Largo first.
Please. Here.
He apparently had a bounty on him from Davik.